anybody who was from Lower Manhattan, you know, bands like the Children of God, David Peel and the Lower East Side, all these kind of sort of like hippie, have a marijuana bands and all that kind of stuff. We used to play like at the Electric Circus on 8th Street and the Dome underneath it, and we were just downtown guys. And so the Children of God had a song called Do What You Want to Do, and they had this awesome turnaround in it that went, and I kept that in my mind for years, and I kept thinking, I'm going to steal that riff and stick it in a song. Years later, we became Chic, and the record company asked us to produce the Rolling Stones or Bette Midler. And we said, well, if we produce the Rolling Stones or Bette Midler and we get a hit, you're just going to think it's another great Rolling Stones record or another great Bette Midler record. Give us an artist that's totally unknown. And they gave us Sister Sledge, and we created We Are Family, He's the Greatest Dancer, Thinking of You. What I actually think is pound for pound the greatest record of my life, the greatest pop record. There's not one song on that album that's a filler record. And that's that.
So now after you worked with Sister Sledge, right? So you guys Chic it, you had done really well. That album is great, We Are a Family. But then you get asked to produce for one of the greats, Diana Ross. How did that come about?
Yeah, so Diana Ross happened, she came to our concert. We were playing at a joint called the Santa Monica Civic. And you know, like I said, we weren't stars. We didn't know stars. We just sort of knew stars. So she came to see our show, and I was like, holy shit, look at that, Diana Ross. And we saw the hair waving and blowing in the wind. And we're like, wow, this is amazing. And so the head of Motown Records at the time, the president, not Barry Gordy, who was the CEO, but the president was a woman named Suzanne DePass. And she was a huge Chic fan. She introduced us to Diana, and because we had a little bit of a row with Sister Sledge because they were really young and they were religious, and I didn't know that Kathy was 16 years old, and I wrote this song called He's the Greatest Dancer, which was about seeing a guy who was so awesome that you'd have a one-night stand with him. Oops. Oops. She told me to change the lyrics, and I was like, you can't do that. It changes the, rock and roll logic. It changes the artistic concept of the song. So anyway, we had a fight, but she sang it. We got a huge record, platinum, double, huge. So now we work with our first star. The last thing I want to do is have a fight with Diana Ross. So we decided to interview her so that we would only talk about subject matter that was relevant to Diana Ross. Well, one night I happened to go out to a transvestite bar, and while I was standing at the urinal, on either side of me were 6 dudes, really big tall guys with fly hair, and they all were dressed up like Diana Ross. And I swear to God, you can't make this up. I'm standing there, and she was our first star, and I couldn't even get excited to tell them, oh shit, I'm producing Diana Ross, because we were scrubs. We had only done Chic and Sister Sledge. They would never believe me. So I called my partner, we didn't have cell phones or anything. So I go outside and I call my partner and I said, Bernard, write this down because I'm going to get too drunk tonight and I'm going to forget it. So I want you to write down this title called I'm Coming Out. And he said, well, why? I said, because I'm in the bathroom with a bunch of Diana Ross impersonators, female, but they were guys, and we're like, they're standing at the urinal. I said, it was like a Fellini movie. I said, you won't believe this. So now Bernard he's on the phone, he's cracking up. I'm telling him the story. I'm saying, please write this down. And then, so he asked me, well, why would we do that? Why would we turn that into a song? I said, because we'll be recognizing, the sort of the gay appreciation and alliance for Diana Ross. So as soon as we drop the record, at least we know we're going to have an audience, because we had to try and think of every way to get on the radio. So he said, okay, that's a pretty good idea. And the next thing you know, oh, by the way, we used to just work every day. We would just have the studio booked all the time, and we would just go in and write songs and work and work. The next day he came to work and I pulled this on. to I'm coming out. I want, and next thing you know, we had a massive, massive hit. So then, unfortunately, what happened in '79, Disco Sucks happened up at Comiskey Park, and we never got another hit record again. But we had already signed a deal with Diana Ross, so thank God, because people wouldn't even answer our phone calls. So we went to a bar one night, me and Billy Idol. We walked into a bar called the Continental. And Billy and I used to roll everywhere together. Me, Billy, and Perry, they were like my boys, because I had a car and I guess he didn't. So Perry and Billy would be squeezed into my Maserati into the other seat, and we go club hopping. So we went to this joint called the Continental, and we walked in, and Billy saw David Bowie, and they called him in England David Bowie. And Billy, we walk in, and Billy, true story, Billy walks in and goes, "Bloody hell, it's fucking David Bowie!" And as he says Bowie, he barfs. This shit was hysterical. I mean, but Billy, somebody in the room has got to know Billy. He's that guy. Billy is fucking cool as shit. He's so cool. He didn't drop a beat. He just went, "Bloody hell, that's fucking David Bowie." Hello, Mike. And at that point, I walked over to David, and of course he had already recorded Young Americans, and everybody in the Young Americans are all the guys I grew up with. Luther Vandross, Carlos Alomar, we all high school.
Down in Philly recorded that? Right?
Yeah, we were all high school buddies together. They were all from Sesame Street. I followed in Carlos Alomar's footsteps. Every job he had and left, I would then go join, I'd get the job after Carlos. So I talked to David, I said, "Yeah, man, you live in the same building with all my friends, blah, blah, blah." And all we talked about was jazz. David was such a jazz fanatic, I had no idea. And I grew up here in Greenwich Village, and my parents are beatniks, heroin addicts, and they loved bebop, and I knew all about jazz. And Bowie and I, we just got along, it was like magic. First night, first meeting, and we just loved each other. We talked about what the album was going to be like, because he said to me that night, "Hey Nile, I think I want you to produce my next record." Now this is after Scary Monsters. This is the very next album. Bowie didn't have a record deal. Can you believe that? David Bowie was like dropped. Like, I'm like, damn, are you kidding? So he had to pay for the record himself. So we wanted to really figure out what we were going to do before we went into the studio and booked time. So we traveled, we went to different museums, different people's houses with record collections. There was a guy, Jerry Wexler, from Atlantic Records, who was known for having an incredible record collection. We went to Jerry Wexler's house, we went to everybody that we knew, Seymour Stein, everybody, it was like the shit. And then he said to me one day, true story, we were trying to figure out what the concept was, and he knocked on my apartment door, and he was holding something behind his back. And he says to me, "Nah, darling, I want my album to sound like this." And he whipped out a picture of Little Richard in a red suit getting into a red Cadillac, and Little Richard's hair was like that. It was red and monochromatic. And if you guys look at the cover to China Girl, and you see David Bowie in yellow, his hair is yellow, and he's like, we had this shit down. I said, so I knew what he meant from that photo was not, he didn't want a retro record. He didn't want me to go, let's dance. He didn't mean that. When you look at that picture, Little Richard, it looks like it's from the future. It could be from any period, even though it was really clear what year it was because of the model of Cadillac. You know, it had the bullet back, the bullet tail lights and the whole bit. And I could just, the way that David Bowie sees the world is a different way than, it's like Picasso. He sees some other stuff. And at that point, we had become so close that I knew what he meant. When he showed me that picture, I was like, okay, he wants hits. And then he said to me, Nile, I want you to do what you do best. And I said, well, what's that, David? Now, we've been talking nothing about jazz. He says, I want you to do hit records. And I said, David Bowie, you want hit records? He said, yeah. So I go over to Switzerland, to his crib, and I'm laying in bed one day, and he walks into my room, and he says, Nile, darling, I think this is a hit. And he plays this. And I looked at him and I says, David, what do you call that? And he said, let's dance. And I said, David, I come from dance music. If I play that shit, I'm gonna have to turn in my black union probably. And he was playing it on a 12-string guitar, no less. So it was sounding so folky. I was like, no, we can't call it. But David sees the world total. It's like, he didn't mean like dancing on the dance floor. He was like talking about the juxtaposition between this and then. I'm like, no, David, no. Yeah, ever since disco sucks, I don't even say the word dance anymore. Please, no. So I asked him to let me do an arrangement. And he said, okay, cool. So I played. Man, this sounds dark as hell. Right, so I played. And then I went. So I went to a A minor 13 chord because I knew he would love the jazzy thing, right? So. Anyway, you get the idea. So David was really into it, but it was still like not quite right to me. So I moved it up a half step, and I went, and I stopped the moving voice, and I just went, and I just stayed there, and I went. And I went, that was cool. Then I moved it up an octave, and I went. Then I did B flat minor 13 up an octave. So we went. Engineer at the time, Bob Clearmountain, used to get delays. Everybody knows old school records, right? We make old school records. We're getting the delay times from the drums, and then we're using that to like figure out how we're going to get the delays that we're going to put on the vocals. Well, David and I happened to walk into the studio while Clearmountain was getting the delay times, and he put my guitar in the delay, and we never heard anything. And then he panned it. He auto-panned it left, and we were like, what the hell was this? So I stopped chucking because I didn't have to because the delay was doing this amazing thing. And then that set up the whole concept for the record. This is a true story. Most people don't know this. We did that album start to finish from the day we recorded in 17 days, mixed, delivered, and everything. We never touched it again. There are no two versions of Let's Dance. There's no two versions of China Girl. There's no two versions of anything on that record. We did it like a black record. One take, that's it. Because like we used to say, Madonna would say, time is money and the money is mine. The tape costs money, the engineers cost money, the studio costs money. We did that so fast, it was ridiculous. And it wound up being the biggest record of Bowie's life, I think. Like right out of the box, I think we sold 14 million albums, something insane. 11 to 14 million records. Changed my whole life. And then people started to answer my phone calls.
And I know we're running out of time, but we got to mention that the guitar solo on that, played by a fairly unknown at this point still, Stevie Ray Vaughan, right?
Yeah, when earlier he asked me about that, and I said, when David and I recorded Let's Dance, and we brought Stevie up, David had seen Stevie in Montreux, and I remember when we thought Let's Dance was really good, but we didn't think it was like amazing and awesome, but we thought it was really good. Stevie Ray Vaughan, the look on his face when he heard that track, I swear to you, I have never felt like this in my life. Because, I didn't know Stevie. We met that first day when we played the track. When I looked at his face and he looked at the speakers, and I could just tell he thought that was so important. The last thing he wanted to do was get in the way of what he was hearing. So if you hear his solo on Let's Dance, it's fucking genius. Like he plays like one note at certain times. We go, listen. And he just lets the groove play. And it was like unreal. And David and I looked at each other and thought, like, if this guy thinks it's that important, it must be amazing. And Stevie Ray whipped through all of his solos on the album in no time at all. And then David and I wrote the last song with David in about 2 or 3 hours, and we were done.
And now, we don't have time to talk about all the other artists you mentioned, Madonna, Duran Duran, I mean, the list goes on and on. I want to talk about now your sound is still so important in your work. Talk for a minute about working with Daft Punk on Random Access Memories, a great album, and Get Lucky with Pharrell.
So, I know this is long, I'm sorry guys. So anyway, so the very first single was recorded at a studio called Electric Lady. What a lot of people don't know is that Hendrix used to frequent like all the clubs downtown in the Village all the time. Like when I was a kid, I played with Jimmy. It was nothing to see Hendrix walking around the street in the Village. So Electric Lady, before it became Electric Lady, was a nightclub called Generation. We used to play there all the time. I remember the first time Jethro Tull came to New York City, and I remember the first time I met Jeff Beck. We were all at Generation, like that was the spot to go jam at on H Street. And so when Hendrix turned it into a studio, like when I got a chance to finally make a record and like had money, we went to Electric Lady to record. So we cut our first record there. So when Daft Punk came to my apartment, they told me that they were recording at Electric Lady, and I told them, that's where we recorded Dance, Dance, Dance. They couldn't believe it. And they asked me, they said, well, how did you make Chic records? And I said, well, here's the truth. This is what we would do. And I said, well, whoever came up with the idea first, the other person would then come up with a riff to support that idea. And so they played me what would be called Get Lucky. And when I heard it didn't suck, but it wasn't the shit to me. It was like, okay. So I asked them to cut every instrument and just let me play with the drums. So I played with the drums, and then I played a single note guitar part on top of my chuck. And they flipped out, and they had everybody else. I think I'm not telling on them, this is common knowledge now. Then they made everybody else record to me. I did that on 3 songs. I did Lose Yourself to Dance, which basically became a trio. There's nothing on it but guitar, bass, and drums, and Daft Punk's vocoder. And Get Lucky, and the beginning of the album. Give Life Back to Music. All 3 of my tracks made the album. And it was just it changed my life once again. And since then, I've done records with country guys who are amazing. I love guitar players. Like I work with everybody from John McLaughlin to Jeff Beck. I just love playing with other guitar players. So I've just done a new Keith Urban record, who's a monster guitar player. I've I've played with so many great people that I can't believe my life. I was just telling Jan Winter that, and I've known Jan for like 80 gazillion years. I mean, he may pretend, but we used to go on vacations together. We were like so tight. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I said, like last night, I had one of the greatest nights of my life because I was giving a friend of mine a little birthday party, and at the table next to me is Diana Ross's daughter, Quincy Jones's daughter, all people that I love and I've known since they were children, and now they're big stars. And now me, this kid who just wanted to get one-hit record. I've sold over 300 million albums and 75 million singles. I mean, give me a break. I was just hoping for one song. I would have been really fine with one song. And the fact that now, I cannot tell you how many great records I have coming out with amazing artists, like 20 years old, and we have so much respect for each other. I don't look down on them. They don't feel like, oh, Mr. God, Nile, because what did I tell you? I joined the band. Everybody I work with, I joined the band.
Well, now, since we got to finish up here in a moment, you think you could play us out with one more, maybe a little bit of the tune I skipped over earlier, the classic Chic tune, Good Times.
So this song was so unbelievably important to Chic because this was our last #1 record as a band, as Chic. When we recorded Good Times, we had no idea about this new phenomenon breaking called hip hop. And at the time, we were really, and we still are, great, I say we, I act like Bernard is still, I can't believe it. But anyway, I'm still like amazing friends with Debbie Harry and Chris Stein. So Debbie and Chris took me to this event called a hip hop. And they told me that what the definition of hip hop meant was the person they find something hip and they hop on it. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So they take me to this playground over in Queens, and we get there, and the only record they're playing is Good Times. And there's a line of DJs, like there's a whole line, there's a line of MCs waiting to go rhyme over Good Times. So our song is, Sugar Hill Gang went, I says a hip hop, the hip hop, we don't stop, rockin' to the bang bang boogie, say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat. Now what you hear is not a test, cause I'm rapping to the beat, and me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try and move your feet. That one little riff of me just going, wound up influencing the Clash, my great friends Queen. I mean, so many people had records that went bum bum bum, or it was just unbelievable to me, and it just shows you that the power of rock and roll. We're all intersected. I mean, we're just all connected. Like when I wrote that song, nobody knows that John Deacon from Queen was with me the night I wrote this shit. So when everybody says, well, Another One Bites the Dust is copying Good Times, he couldn't help it. He's in the damn studio with me while we're doing it. And he's sitting right there and we're playing boom, 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 boom. So he just changed it to boom, boom. Another One Bites the Dust. But I mean, if I were probably sitting on a Queen session, I'd probably write something that went, Mamma Mia, Mamma Mia, hello now, Beelzebub, that's it for fun for me. I mean, that's what we do. We get inspired by people that we love, and that's what music is. None of our shit was original. There is nothing that we do that's original. What's original is our interpolation and our reinterpretation. Even a guy like me who learned classical music, when I started writing my first songs, they were just variations of exercises that I used to play. And then I would turn it into a song. You know, it's like, there you go. So anyway, I am so honored to be here for a lifetime of doing what I would do for damn near nothing. I would do it for free because I just love playing guitar and I love being in bands and I love people asking me to solve problems, and I can't believe that I get paid so much money to do it. It's unreal. You know,
yes.
Here's my manager over here, Peter, and we talk all the time. We're on the road like so much, and we always laugh and say, we would do this shit for free. The only thing we're really getting paid for is to travel, eat horrible food, stay in funky hotels, and like be in the mud at like Glastonbury and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is that once we get in front of the people, we're doing what we just love from the bottom of our hearts. And that's why our shows are so completely consistent, because we cannot wait to get out there and play those songs.
That's it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank Klipsch Audio again for helping us out tonight. Congratulations to all the inductees in the house. Thank you, everybody. And now I can't wait tomorrow until we officially induct you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Thank you,
Nile Rodgers.
I just want to say that music has given me the best life I could ever imagine. I was a homeless kid on the streets, begging, panhandling, spanging for money, and I got a break when I went to Manhattan School of Music and looked on the bulletin board in Sesame Street. I didn't know what Sesame Street says. You know, in the old days, right? Come on, it would say, I'm putting together a band, and you would describe all the type of genres that you want, you know, and it would say, no so-and-so need apply, but I'm putting a band together, and I want this and a that, and so-and-so, and my dream band was a cross between Fairport Convention, Country Joe and the Fish, the Grateful Dead. This is what I said to Bernard the first day I met him. That obviously didn't happen, but what happened was this, and here I am today, and you guys are honoring me for something I would happily do for no money at all.
Cheese and rice!
I thank you. I feel honored from the bottom of my heart, and if it weren't for Bowie, the P-52s, I mean, Billy, the list goes on and on. I would not be standing here, and of course, because of my band Chic. If it was not for Chic, none of that shit would happen because no one cared. It was Chic that made everybody like us. It was, you know, we play our shows, and who's in the audience? Our friends from KISS. Gene Simmons vomited in my first Porsche. Anyway, thank you guys so much for indulging me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the night.